Welcome to Bible True Crime with Mr. Thoroughly. If you like true crime and interesting Bible stories, then this is the podcast for you. Today we'll be examining the Bloody Coat Conspiracy. Okay, Heidi, for this episode, we are going to be looking at some pretty extreme hate in a family. And our story is going to be happening in about 1900 BC. It's almost 4,000 years ago. And when you look in the book of Genesis, you have Abraham and his son Isaac, and then his son Jacob. And then Jacob has 12 sons. And we are going to look at a story of those 12 sons, probably the biggest story involving those 12 sons. And we're going to look at chapter 37. And I'm just going to start off reading here a little bit. Now Jacob dwelt in the land where his father was a stranger, in the land of Canaan. This is the history of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brothers. And the lad was with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought a bad report of them to his father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age. Also, he made him a tunic of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. Okay. So Heidi, when you look at this, what do you think about a father that loved one son more than his other sons?
Well, as a mother, I think it's kind of difficult to think about that. It'd be very difficult to love one child over the other. Of course, children are different, and it sounds like in this situation, Joseph kind of sounds like a goody two shoes in comparison to the brothers. And as he's brought back a bad report about them, and of course, they take that as one more reason to hate him. I don't know. It just seems like the dynamic would be really weird there, in something that we don't understand with having more than one wife and concubines and all of those kinds of things that would add extra layers of competition and strange dynamics to the family.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It says that he loved him more than his brothers, but it doesn't say that he hated his other sons.
Right.
He still loves them. It's just that Joseph's got a special place for him, and I would look at it and think, well, and parents talk about this sometimes. If you have a favorite, do you have a favorite child or something like that? And it doesn't mean that you don't love all your children, but some children do things to make it um, harder to put them above the other children or something like that, But whatever the situation is here, and it could be that if we were alive at that time and seeing the way that all these brothers behaved, that we'd say, yeah, this one I like better, But uh, Jacob definitely loves Joseph more, and he gives him that special coat. And his brothers hated him, and it says they couldn't even speak peaceably to him. It's about to get amped up here, so let's read on. Verse 5 of Genesis chapter 37. Now Joseph had a dream, and he told it to his brothers, and they hated him even more. So he said to them, please hear this dream which I have dreamed. There we were, binding sheaves in the field. Then behold, my sheaf arose and also stood upright, and indeed your sheaves stood all around and bowed down to my sheaf. And his brothers said to him, shall you indeed reign over us? Or shall you indeed have dominion over us? So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Then he dreamed still another dream and told it to his brothers and said, look, I have dreamed another dream. And this time the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars bowed down to me. So he told it to his father and his brothers. And his father rebuked him and said to him, what is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall your mother and I and your brothers indeed come to bow down to the earth before you? And his brothers envied him, but his father kept the matter in mind. So here, it just keeps saying that his brothers got even angrier at him, that they hated him even more, I guess is the way that it says it. So there's different levels of hate, but it just keeps getting ramped up, and they hate him even more. And even his father's looking at him and saying, why would you do that? But when you look at the second dream, it's kind of like, maybe you should stop telling them your dreams because they don't like it at all.
Well, and you want to give him credit because he's telling the truth. He's telling what his dream is, but sometimes there's a better way to handle that. You don't have to tell every single thing that happens.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. Well, let's look and see what happens though, because the hate has been getting ramped up, and it already said way at the start, that his brothers couldn't even speak peaceably to him. And then it got worse and worse there. So let's pick up in verse 12 of Genesis 37. Then his brothers went to feed their father's flock in Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, are not your brothers feeding the flock in Shechem? Come, I will send you to them. So he said to him, here I am. Then he said to him, please go and see if it is well with your brothers and well with the flocks, and bring back word to me. So he sent him out of the valley of Hebron, and he went to Shechem. Now a certain man found him, and there he was wandering in the field. And the man asked him, saying, what are you seeking? So he said, I am seeking my brothers. Please tell me where they are feeding their flocks. And the man said, they have departed from here, for I heard them say, let us go to Dothan. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them in Dothan. Now when they saw him afar off, even before he came near them, they conspired against him to kill him. Then they said to one another, look, this dreamer is coming. Come therefore, let us now kill him and cast him into some pit, and we shall say, some wild beast has devoured him. We shall see what will become of his dreams. So the hate has gotten to the point to where have decided they're just going to kill him, and that's the plan. They're going to kill him, and they're going to say that a wild beast has devoured him. So they're off the hook, even though they know what happened though. But they're going to just cover it up by saying that some beast got to him. But it's kind of shocking to see them get to the point to where they want to kill their brother. And I know that's not an unusual thing in history for a sibling to kill another sibling, though. Although I can't see how I could do something like that for sure, though. But these brothers just really hate Joseph.
Yeah. And it seems like when you've got something against somebody, all that you can see is their bad qualities, or um if you've got that level of jealousy going on, you can't ever see anything good. And it didn't seem like they were looking for anything good ever. They were, it seems like they were looking to see what they could get away with. and Joseph always seemed to be the one to tell their dad if they were doing something wrong.
Okay, now before we start reading in verse 21, we're going to see one of the brothers speak up here, and his name is Reuben. He's actually the oldest brother, and he has reason to try to make things gain some points, I guess you could say, with his father Jacob. And also, sometimes you'll see Israel and Jacob. It's the same person. He's just got two names there. And Reuben had slept with one of his father's concubines, Bilhah, back in Genesis chapter 35. So he was in a lot of trouble with his father. And so much so that at the end of Genesis, when Jacob is giving out the blessings to his sons, um, Reuben, who is the oldest son and would get the double blessing, does not get the double blessing because of because he slept with his father's concubine. So Jacob has something big against Reuben. So Reuben's going to want to try to even the field or play catch up here a little bit. So let's see what happens. Genesis 37, beginning of verse 21. But Reuben heard it, and he delivered him out of their hands and said, let us not kill him. And Reuben said to them, shed no blood, but cast him into this pit, which is in the wilderness, and do not lay a hand on him, that he might deliver him out of their hands and bring him back to his father. So you definitely see there where he's trying to bring him back to his father. He didn't want him to be killed because then he's going to get him in even more trouble. And it's hard to know exactly what the role of the oldest son would have been, but it might have been, that he would have got blamed for that too or something somehow.
It makes you wonder how that would have affected the dynamics with the other brothers if he's going to come back later and rescue Joseph. Then would that make them turn against him too?
Yeah, I'm not sure unless he was planning on doing it in secret. I don't know if any of them really thought out a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, that shows what that level of hatred and anger will do to a person.
Yeah. Well, let's see what happens next here. So it came to pass when Joseph had come to his brothers that they stripped Joseph of his tunic, the tunic of many colors that was on him. Then they took him and cast him into a pit, and the pit was empty. There was no water in it. And they sat down to eat a meal. Then they lifted their eyes and looked, and there was a company of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with their camels, bearing spices, balm, and myrrh, on their way to carry them down to Egypt. So Judah said to his brothers, what profit is there if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh. And his brothers listened. Then Midianite traders passed by. So the brothers pulled Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. And they took Joseph to Egypt. So a lot of stuff happening here. And one thing to keep straight here is that it says Midianite traders and it also says Ishmaelites. The Midianite traders were Ishmaelites. So it's using those terms interchangeably here. And they are on their way to Egypt. So Judah, he has this idea, let's make a profit off of this. Let's sell him to these traders and then we get rid of him, but we actually don't have to kill him and we make a profit. So everybody kind of goes along with that. And then it looks like these traders are going to take Joseph to Egypt. It's interesting that they have him down in a pit though, and they're sitting there eating, and that's when the traders come by. And I wonder what's going through their head when when they take Joseph and they throw him in the pit, and then they're sitting there eating. Wonder if they gave him anything to eat, or what was happening there.
It says he didn't have any water, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think when it talks about the pit, I think it's a cistern, which would have been a place where they'd store water, and especially in arid areas, they just have these big things dug where water would collect.
Oh, okay.
Um, so when they throw him into this, there's nothing in it. It's just it's just empty there. So I guess he's not treading water or he's not drowning. So
Yeah. Now, do we know where Judah fell in the line of brothers? Because it seemed like they were quick to follow his lead.
I think that he's second in line. I think it's Reuben and then Judah, but I could be wrong with that though. But I think that's where he's at. I think he's pretty close to the top with that.
Okay. Now, do we know if Joseph had any, or not Joseph, Jacob, if he had anything against Judah?
I'm not sure. Let me look something up real quick. Okay, so I looked it up, and Judah is actually the fourth son of Jacob, and it doesn't seem like there's anything talking about a direct problem that Jacob has had with Judah, at least not at this point that we know about. He is definitely somebody that helped to save Joseph though by selling him into slavery, and that really sounds like a horrible thing. But of course, we know how this story ends, that this is going to be to save them all. What's going to happen with this situation?
Well, that's good to know. It just seemed like there might be another story there with all the strange family dynamics. But sorry to get us sidetracked on that whole thing.
No, that's okay. It's kind of fun to go down this sometimes. And I was thinking he was the second son, but he's not. He's the fourth son. So let's look at verse 29. Then Reuben returned to the pit, and indeed Joseph was not in the pit. And he tore his clothes, and he returned to his brothers and said, "The lad is no more, and I, where shall I go?" So that's interesting that Reuben, he had intended on rescuing Joseph and bringing him back to his father, but then they sold him into slavery. So when he gets back to the pit, Joseph's gone, and now he's in trouble, and he's thinking, "Where shall I go?" Or really, what am I going to do now? Because
Oh,
he's still at odds with his father, and now he's lost his bargaining chip, I guess you could call it, that he had here.
well, that's interesting. I just assumed that Reuben was right there with them when they made the decision to sell him instead of leaving him there in the pit. But he must have gone off somewhere.
Yeah, he must not have been in the immediate vicinity when all that happened. Well, let's look at 31. So Genesis 37 and verse 31. So they took Joseph's tunic, killed a kid of the goats, and dipped the tunic in the blood. Now, just that's what a baby goat's called as a kid. So they didn't actually kill a kid, but they killed a baby goat. Verse 32. Then they sent the tunic of many colors, and they brought it to their father and said, "We have found this. Do you know whether it is your son's tunic or not?" So their plan here, and it's they wanted to kill him first, and then they end up selling him into slavery. And neither one of those options is good, but at least they didn't kill him. But there's something else that they've got planned here, and that is to tell their father that his favorite son is dead. And as a parent, I just think that's got to be a pretty horrible thing to go through. So this isn't, they're not deciding we're just going to do good from now on because we messed stuff up. They just keep getting worse and worse with things.
And I kind of have to think that it seems like Jacob would have some sort of suspicion with it. Maybe he doesn't, but knowing the way that his sons have been in the past, it just seems like maybe there'd be some suspicion there, but maybe not.
Yeah, well, it sounds like well, let's read on here. I don't want to spoil anything. So let's look at verse 33. And he recognized it and said, "It is my son's tunic. A wild beast has devoured him. Without doubt, Joseph is torn to pieces." Then Jacob tore his clothes and put sackcloth on his waist and mourned for his son many days. And all his sons and all his daughters arose to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. And he said, "For I shall go down into the grave to my son in mourning." Thus his father wept for him. Now the Midianites had sold him, that would be Joseph, in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guard. So that finishes out chapter 37 there. But it's interesting here that once Joseph sees this coat that he'd given to his favorite son, covered in blood, that he said without a doubt, his son's been torn to pieces. So he was absolutely certain that his son was dead and there was nobody that could comfort him at that point. And that it's just interesting that sometimes people can be so convinced that something is true, even though it's not. And he believed without a doubt that his son was dead based upon the evidence that they showed him. And also, so then he can't be comforted and all that, but it does show us a little peek into what's going to happen next, and that's where Joseph is going to rise from a slave to being a very powerful person there in Egypt. And when there's a famine, it's actually going to save Israel and his family. So this ends up being a good thing, that God's going to use all this for good, but it sure doesn't look like it at this point, and it never was intended to be a good thing by what the brothers end up doing. Now they do something bad and evil, but God is going to use it to accomplish good things.
So in this account with Joseph and his brothers, what do you think is the most important, interesting thing?
The most important, interesting thing? I don't know, but I do think that it's really interesting to see how family members can hate each other so much that they want to kill or murder, and then they don't actually end up doing that, but then in this bloody coat conspiracy, they end up convincing their father that his son is dead, which that's a very horrible thing to do. And that's the thing that really, really grips me with all of that, But then as far as important, I'd just say that, it's amazing what God can do with the things that we mess up, that he does so much to make things better.
He sure does.
Steve, do you have a parting scripture for us today?
1 Peter 3, verse 15 says, "But sanctify the Lord God in your hearts, and always be ready to give a defense to everyone who asks you a reason for the hope that is in you, with meekness and fear." All scripture is taken from the New King James Version, New American Standard Bible, English Standard Version, New International Version, or the King James Version.
Thank you for listening today. Be sure to follow the Mr. Therley podcast, share it with your friends, and join us again next time for more Bible True Crime.